For decades, locals whispered about a lone figure deep in the frozen forests of Karelia, a man who built his home inside a living tree and vanished from the world. When someone finally stepped inside, what they discovered defied all logic. Hidden rooms, forgotten designs, and a secret buried beneath the roots that time itself had guarded. Stay with us, because what they found inside this veteran's tree will change everything you thought you knew about solitude and survival. The man the world erased. Somewhere beyond the last frozen road of Karelia, where pine needles glitter like glass under pale winter light, a man vanished from the known world. His name, Nikolai Romanov, lingered in forgotten military archives, a faint trace among lists of the missing. No one noticed when he stopped answering letters, when his apartment emptied, or when his uniform disappeared from the registry. For the nation, he had simply ceased to exist. In the chaos after war, Nikolai walked away from the cities that once echoed with triumph and grief. Factories were roaring back to life, monuments rising, parades filling the squares, but none of it stirred him. He carried only a pack of tools, a battered notebook, and a silence that seemed heavier than his gear. Trains took him north until the rails ended. From there, his footprints threaded into snow that no one else had crossed for years. The forest swallowed him slowly. At first, he camped beneath overhangs of frozen rock, learning how the wind spoke before dawn. He mapped the landscape by memory, tracing rivers that disappeared beneath ice and valleys that swallowed sound. Each night, the stars above seemed closer than human company. When he finally found the colossal oak rising from a hollow of mist, something inside him stilled, as though the world had been waiting for his arrival. Building a life inside a living tree defied every rule of engineering he once obeyed. Yet Nikolai treated the task like a sacred experiment. With a hand axe and patience honed in battlefields, he hollowed chambers without harming the trunk's pulse. He shaped every curve by following the grain, measuring the wood's heartbeat beneath his palms. Over months, the space became a hidden dwelling, small, precise, alive. From the outside, it looked like a scar on bark. Inside, it glowed with human warmth. Food came from streams that thawed only weeks each year. He smoked fish on stone pits and gathered roots buried under frost, learning which plants whispered poison and which carried healing. To store supplies, he crafted wooden containers sealed with resin. Even his stove, a masterpiece of scavenged metal, burned without smoke, feeding its breath through carved vents that exhaled into the soil. Every invention merged survival with secrecy. The days followed no calendar. Sunlight became the only clock he trusted. When snow erased his paths, he felt relief instead of fear. Isolation meant safety from questions. He wrote meticulous notes in his weather-stained notebook, recording designs for tools that no one would use, and diagrams of the forest's unseen systems, routes that mirrored rivers, currents that hummed under stone. He began to believe the forest itself ran on an order deeper than any human science. Occasionally, he heard far-off thunder from artillery tests or aircraft echoing from the south, reminders of a civilization that had chosen noise over meaning. Those sounds made him retreat deeper into his shelter, wrapping himself in the comfort of muffled silence. The longer he lived among trees, the more his senses sharpened to their language. The shift of air before snow, the groan of bark warning of storms, the tiny percussion of thawing icicles at sunrise. What others would call emptiness became a conversation he alone understood. Years later, travelers claimed they sometimes glimpsed a dim light between trunks on winter nights. They spoke of it as folklore, a ghost of an old soldier who had married the forest. None dared search. Legends fade faster than footprints in snow, and Nikolai preferred it that way. He was no spirit, only a man rebuilding himself in the space the world forgot to fill. But somewhere beneath that tranquil exile, something waited, a design, a purpose even he had not yet confronted. Why had he chosen that particular oak? Why did the ground beneath it tremble on windless nights, as if answering to something buried deep below? Stay with us as the mystery deepens. The heart of the oak. The storm that night came without warning. It began as a low hum beneath the soil, a vibration so steady that Nikolai thought it might be the pulse of the oak itself. Then the forest exhaled, and wind swept through the valley like the voice of something ancient waking. Snow struck the bark in silver sheets while the branches groaned under invisible weight. Inside his hollow refuge, Nikolai sat by the dim stove flame and listened to the great tree breathe through the blizzard. At dawn, the storm broke, leaving a silence that rang sharper than sound. Outside, the landscape had changed. Drifts sculpted new ridges, rivers were sealed under ice, and every footprint from the day before was erased. Nikolai stepped out slowly, studying the tree that had become his home. Its bark steamed faintly where the sun touched it, and from one crack a thin wisp of warm vapor rose, curling like smoke from a secret chimney. He followed it with his eyes until it vanished into the white air. Curiosity pushed him to examine the oak's base more closely. Beneath a curtain of frozen moss, he found a seam no wider than a knife blade running along the roots. It wasn't there the week before. When he pressed his palm to it, he felt a faint warmth, as though the heart of the tree still burned inside. For the first time in years, unease rippled through him, not fear of the elements, but of the unknown chamber that seemed to stir within living wood. Inside the shelter, he cleared the floor, tracing every sound the oak made. The vibrations formed patterns, steady and rhythmic, too deliberate to be random. During his years as an engineer, Nikolai had studied seismic sensors and pressure waves. What he heard now felt eerily similar. Could the roots be carrying signals through the ground? If so, from where? He began sketching diagrams across fresh pages, comparing the tremors to electrical frequencies remembered from long-ago field experiments. Days passed with the same quiet pulse echoing underfoot. He attached a makeshift gauge to one wall, a tin needle balanced on a strand of horsehair, and watched it quiver whenever the sound deepened. The readings repeated every 12 hours, perfectly timed with sunrise and nightfall. The tree was alive beyond biology. It was rhythmic, mathematical, almost mechanical in its consistency. Something ancient and deliberate was at work beneath the frost. As the light faded one evening, a low crack from inside the trunk startled him. A thin line split across the inner wall, revealing a darker layer beneath, smooth as polished stone. The sight filled him with both wonder and dread. No natural oak should hold rock inside its core. He touched it gently. The surface felt metallic, cold, and flawless. He realized then that his sanctuary was not simply hollowed wood. The tree had grown around something far older. That night, he barely slept. His mind wandered between memories of wartime laboratories and the classified projects whispered about among engineers, devices buried in remote terrain, self-sustaining machines meant to vanish with time. Could this oak have grown around one? If so, who placed it here, and why? He watched the lantern flicker against the strange surface until exhaustion pulled him into uneasy dreams. When morning came, a new sound drifted through the forest, a faint tapping, distant yet deliberate, echoing through the frozen roots like someone knocking from below. Nikolai froze, every sense alert. The tapping came again, measured, patient, answering the rhythm he had been studying for weeks. He moved toward the crack in the wall, heart pounding. The metal surface vibrated once, then fell silent. Whatever was beneath the oak had heard him. Somewhere deep below, within earth untouched by light, something responded to his presence. The warmth through the roots grew stronger, and the snow outside began to melt in perfect circles around the base of the tree. Nikolai stared in disbelief as thin spirals of mist rose from the thawed ground, weaving upward like silent signals. What had the oak been guarding all these years, and was it still alive? Come with us to explore the hidden corners of the story. The Forest's Whisper. The mist thickened until it looked like breath rising from the soil itself. Nikolai crouched beside the roots, tracing the warm ring where frost had vanished. The ground pulsed faintly, as if an invisible heart beat beneath it. For a man who had once trusted only machines, the living rhythm unsettled him more than any engine's thrum. He backed away slowly, listening to the forest breathe in uneven gasps. The next morning arrived dim and gray, sunlight diffused through a ceiling of fog. The forest seemed changed, uneasy, as though it had noticed him noticing. Birds that usually greeted dawn stayed silent. Even the wind hesitated, moving only in short, cautious sighs through the branches. Nikolai gathered his notebook and stepped outside, counting the steam spirals that still drifted upward from the thawed earth. There were now 12, arranged in a perfect circle around the oak, each one the same size. Patterns again. Always patterns. He spent the day measuring distances between them with a strip of braided wire. The results stunned him. The spacing matched proportions once used in early Soviet communication arrays, ratios designed to amplify low-frequency signals through the ground. Someone, or something, had built this centuries ago, and the forest had swallowed it whole. He sketched diagrams furiously, trying to reconcile logic with the impossible. Beneath the oak, a design older than memory seemed to be awakening. By nightfall, the temperature dropped sharply. Frost reclaimed the air, but the circle of melted snow remained untouched, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Nikolai lit a lantern and placed it near one of the roots. The flame bent toward the center of the pattern, drawn by a magnetic pull he couldn't explain. He watched, breath held, as the light flickered twice, then steadied. A low vibration followed, soft but deliberate. Echoing through his feet, the forest was answering his presence. He hurried inside and switched off the stove to listen more clearly. From deep underground came a sequence of tones, long, short, like coded messages. He recognized the rhythm immediately. It resembled the pulse patterns used in encrypted military transmissions. Decades of solitude vanished in an instant, replaced by the instincts of the engineer he once was. He translated each pulse into symbols, writing by lamplight until the meaning formed on paper. The message was chillingly simple, still functioning. The words refused to leave his mind. What machine could remain functional after all these years? He turned over every explanation, from seismic sensors to experimental transmitters, but nothing fit. No human device could survive buried beneath living roots, powered by nothing visible. Unless, he thought grimly, the tree itself had become the conduit, drawing energy through the soil the way it drew water and light. Nature and invention merged by time. Restlessness overtook him. He wrapped himself in a coat and ventured back into the night. The mist had thickened again, swirling around his boots. Each step brought the faint sound of shifting earth beneath the roots. When he knelt and pressed his ear to the ground, he heard movement, slow, steady, mechanical. The realization struck with icy clarity. Something vast was turning beneath him, deep under layers of frozen clay. He stumbled back toward the oak, fear cutting through years of practiced calm. Inside the hollow, the metallic layer he had once discovered shimmered faintly, reflecting light from his lantern. It vibrated again, stronger this time. Dust rained from the ceiling as the entire trunk groaned. The warmth spread through the floorboards until it felt like the heartbeat of a buried giant. Nikolai gripped the wall, unable to tell whether the tree was alive or awakening something that was. Then the ground fell silent. The warmth vanished. Only the wind outside moved, whispering through branches like a warning too old for words. Nikolai stood frozen in the half-dark, every sense braced for a sound that never came. But deep within the soil, far beyond hearing, the pulse continued, steady, patient, waiting for him to dig deeper. What was it that had endured for so long, hidden beneath roots older than history itself? Let us guide you into what no one expected. The woman who walked into the storm. The message that began deep beneath the forest didn't end there. Weeks later, in a small government outpost near Novoladoga, an automatic receiver picked up a faint repeating frequency buried in static. It wasn't strong enough to register on ordinary channels, but Inspector Anna Kuznetsova noticed it by accident while checking reports on missing hikers. The coordinates matched an uninhabited sector long marked as impassable. No communication had ever come from that grid before. Anna had earned a reputation for chasing the inexplicable. She had worked rescue operations in permafrost zones where compasses failed and radio signals bent like echoes. When the alert flashed again on her monitor, same pattern, same timing, curiosity replaced caution. She filed a short notice of field inspection, signed her own clearance, and prepared for departure before dawn. The forecast warned of a heavy snowfront, but she packed light, rations, a radio, and an old map smudged with age. The drive north ended where the road dissolved into ice and wind. Beyond that point, she continued on foot, guided by the compass needle that trembled as if reluctant to move. The forest closed around her in towering columns of white bark and shadow. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became. Even her own breathing seemed to vanish into the stillness. It was a silence that pressed inward, not emptiness but presence, as if something listened from every side. By the second day, visibility dropped to a few meters. Snow whipped sideways in sheets that blurred the line between earth and sky. She followed the trace of the signal through a handheld scanner, its display flickering with erratic pulses. Each surge grew stronger as she advanced, pulling her toward an unseen source. The storm thickened until she could no longer see her boots beneath the drifts, yet the rhythm persisted. 3 beats, a pause, then 2, steady as a heartbeat under the static. At dusk, she found shelter beneath a ridge of frozen stone. Setting up a small transmitter, she tried to identify the pattern. To her surprise, the code resolved into structured data, frequencies identical to obsolete military field systems decommissioned decades earlier. Whoever or whatever sent the signal was using technology that should have been extinct. The coordinates placed the source directly within the restricted forest Nikolai had vanished into long ago. Sleep came lightly, chased by the howl of distant wind. In dreams, she saw light shimmering through branches, pulsing like a lantern buried underground. When morning arrived, the storm's eye passed briefly, unveiling a corridor of frozen trees bending in one direction, as if something beneath the ground had pushed them aside. She followed that unnatural path, heart quickening, boots sinking deep into the crusted snow. By late afternoon, she spotted movement ahead. Not an animal, but smoke rising in a thin, trembling line between the pines. The smell of burning pine resin reached her before she saw the source. She pressed forward until the trees opened into a clearing no map recorded. There stood a structure fused into the side of a massive oak, half dwelling, half organism. Its window glowed faintly behind a veil of frost. The air around it was warmer than the storm itself. Caution warred with instinct. She approached slowly, leaving clear tracks in the snow. The door was small, wooden, fitted perfectly into the living bark. When she raised her hand to knock, the entire trunk gave a deep, resonant creak as though acknowledging her presence. For a moment she hesitated, unsure whether she faced a hermit or something far older. Then she knocked twice. The sound echoed inward, muffled by layers of wood. Silence followed, long, unbroken, until a bolt slid and the door opened a few inches. Through the narrow gap, a pair of gray eyes studied her, wary but alive. Who had been waiting behind that door all these years, and what secret had drawn her across the storm to find him? Stay here as the next twist unfolds. The hatch. Below the firelight. The door opened wider, revealing an interior unlike anything Anna had ever seen. The air carried the scent of pine resin and smoke, mingled with something metallic beneath. The man before her was gaunt but steady, his beard white, his expression sharp and cautious. His voice, when it came, sounded like it hadn't been used in years. "You shouldn't be here," he said simply. Anna lifted her badge, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Inspector Kuznetsova, Forestry Division. We received signals. People were concerned for your safety." His eyes flicked toward the storm outside, then back to her. "The forest takes care of its own," he murmured. Still, something in her calm tone disarmed him. After a long pause, he stepped aside. "Come in before it closes again." Inside, warmth pressed against the cold like a heartbeat. The room glowed with amber light from a small stove. Every surface bore marks of handcraft, tools arranged with precision, shelves lined with jars of preserved herbs, carvings shaped from oak roots. The space felt alive, less like a home than an extension of the forest itself. "You built all this?" she asked quietly. "Piece by piece," he replied, tending the fire. "Out there, everything rots faster than it grows. Here, nothing goes to waste." The wind howled outside, rattling the window. Anna felt a faint vibration under the floorboards, steady and rhythmic, like the pulse of machinery buried deep below. Nikolai noticed her glance downward. His expression shifted, the calm mask tightening. Without a word, he crossed the room, pushed aside a worn rug, and revealed a faint metallic outline in the wood. He brushed away dust, exposing a concealed hatch etched with strange circular patterns. What is this? Anna asked, her voice low. He rested a hand on the cold surface. Something older than me. Older than this forest. A distant rumble shook the ground, faint but deliberate. The lantern's flame bent sideways as if drawn downward. Anna instinctively stepped back, heart pounding. Nikolai looked at her, eyes reflecting the flicker of the lamp. If you want to understand the forest, he said quietly, you'll have to see what it's been hiding. What could lie beneath roots that had outlasted centuries of silence? Stay with us as the secrets grow even darker. The underground cathedral. Nikolai lifted the latch, and the hatch opened with a sigh like the exhale of buried years. A rush of cold air rose from the darkness below, carrying a scent of damp metal and oil. He reached for a lantern, its thin flame cutting a trembling path down the wooden steps. Anna hesitated only a moment before following. The pull of discovery was stronger than the fear clawing her chest. The stairway curved into the earth, walls narrowing as roots thickened overhead. They glistened with moisture, interwoven with wires that pulsed faintly, as if the tree itself carried current through its veins. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. Somewhere beneath the surface, something hummed, a low vibration that seemed to breathe in rhythm with their steps. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber that glowed with soft, amber light. Wooden beams arched across the ceiling like ribs, reinforced with metal plates and copper tubing. A generator whirred quietly in one corner, feeding light through glass bulbs set into the walls. The room looked neither ancient nor modern, but something between, an evolution of both craft and survival. Anna turned slowly, eyes widening at what surrounded her. Shelves lined the walls, filled with intricate models carved from oak and bone. Machines stood half-assembled on tables, delicate mechanisms shaped like wings, gears, and roots entwined. You built this alone? She asked. Not alone, Nikolai said. The forest teaches if you listen long enough. He moved toward a copper console embedded in the wall. When he turned a small lever, hidden lamps flickered to life, revealing branching tunnels leading in every direction. Each passage breathed warmth, carrying a faint scent of resin and metal. Anna realized this was no shelter. It was a living network, sustained by the same tree she had seen above. She stepped closer to one of the carvings, a miniature of the oak itself, its roots wrapped around tiny symbols, circles intersecting triangles, repeating endlessly. What are these? She whispered. Coordinates, Nikolai replied. They lead deeper than anyone should go. A faint tremor rippled underfoot, as if the ground objected to the words. Dust fell from the beams, and the light dimmed. Anna looked toward the dark tunnel ahead, where the air seemed to move on its own. What waited in those hidden corridors that even the forest feared to reveal? Walk with us into the truth that was never meant to surface. The secret beneath silence. The tremor faded into stillness, leaving only the steady hum of hidden machinery. Anna steadied herself against the wall, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Nikolai stood beside her, his face caught between pride and weariness. It's been alive for longer than I have, he said softly. I just learned how to keep it breathing. They moved deeper into the chamber, the air thick with the scent of oil and sap. Along one wall, copper panels displayed faint readings, temperature, pressure, magnetic flow, all fluctuating in perfect rhythm with the sound beneath their feet. Anna realized the network wasn't mechanical alone. It was biological, engineered from both wood and metal, bound by time and purpose. The oak above wasn't simply shelter, it was a living shell for a system that pulsed beneath the entire valley. At the far end, a door of black iron stood sealed with roots grown tightly across its surface. Nikolai approached it slowly. I've never opened it, he admitted. Some things prefer to stay buried. His fingers traced the ancient markings engraved into the metal, circles, lines, and fragments of equations that matched none she'd seen before. The moment his hand pressed against the center, the door shuddered, and a deep tone echoed through the chamber, resonating like the voice of the earth itself. The roots receded one by one, revealing a hollow space beyond. Inside lay a vast chamber, lit by veins of pale light running through the stone. At its core stood a structure shaped like a seed, metallic, smooth, humming quietly. Tubes of sap-fed fluid connected it to the oak's descending roots. It was neither machine nor organism, but both, fused into something that defied every known design. Anna could feel heat radiating from it, steady and alive. Nikolai's voice trembled with reverence. "It's been growing since before my time. I found it when I built my refuge. I realized it was drawing energy from the forest itself, keeping balance where the land was dying." He looked at her then, eyes reflecting the faint glow. "If anyone discovers it, they'll strip it apart to understand it. That's why I stayed." Anna stood silently, the realization settling over her. The hermit hadn't hidden from the world. He had protected it. Above them, the oak creaked gently, roots tightening once more as if sealing the secret in place. In that quiet heartbeat of the earth, both of them understood that some discoveries were never meant to be found. Were you amazed by what lay hidden within the veteran's tree, the life, the silence, and the secret that had slept beneath the roots for decades? Tell us which part of his hidden world left you speechless.